Good morning and welcome everyone. Council is convened for a work session on the Clean Water Commission this June 4th, 2025. We have the Clean Water Commission here to report, so welcome, and I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. My name is Devin Rostfer. I'm the Clean Water Division Manager in Public Works, and we're very excited to be here today. Every year, the Clean Water Commission comes to the Council and presents their annual report of their challenges and achievements from the last year, and also to present the future year's work plan and the priorities that they've established. So today here we have Ted Gaethje, the chair of the Clean Water Commission, and Glenn Dewilly, the vice chair, who will be presenting to you. And then we also have some other Clean Water commissioners here that they will introduce. So I will hand it over to Ted and Glenn.
Councilors, am I on now? Okay. Good morning, councilors. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's also a pleasure to be able to introduce a number of our Clean Water commissioners who are seated behind me. John Chattel, Tracy Chavallo, Emily Hess, and I believe Alexandria Cortez is online. So we have a majority of our Clean Water commissioners here, either in person or online this morning. So without further ado, we'll get started. Glenn and I are going to kind of tag team this, so we'll be exchanging our points of view at different points in the presentation. So I think, as you all know, the Clean Water Commission, it's a 9-member advisory board that really serves to advise the council on clean water issues, and specifically overseeing and working with the Clean Water Division of Public Works. And we review their programs every year, specifically, of course, the permitting for the NDPES permits, and implementing stormwater treatment improvements, supporting water quality monitoring, and then working on public outreach and public education. Those are kind of our goals that have been around for a long time. Mission and vision values are up there. I won't read them. You can see them up there. I just wanted to comment on one thing for our new members of the council, and that is that several years ago, this body decided to take a slightly different course. And instead of being more focused totally on stormwater permitting and the oversight of the stormwater program, we decided to take a more expansive view and look at watershed health throughout the county. And that's kind of been our focal point moving forward. We're still very engaged with stormwater and the importance of the permitting system and the importance of compliance with the Clean Water Act. But it's also important to look at our surface waters, our streams, our lakes, our rivers, and the watersheds that support those, and determine that we can find ways to improve the health of those important resources. So next slide, please. This is kind of an oversight of our current makeup of our board and our commission. I've already introduced the folks here. There are several people that weren't available today, but I don't think we need to spend much time on that. Let's move into our accomplishments for 2024. I think first and foremost is the Clean Water Rate Study that resulted in a significant change to the clean water rates. And I want to, first of all, express my appreciation and the appreciation of our entire commission for the hard work that you all put in, and the hard work that our Clean Water Division did to bring all this together and create an opportunity to enhance that clean water fee and create the ability to do more work in our watersheds and to do important work for stormwater in particular. And I think we were very grateful that that work was, I know several of you weren't on the council when that happened, but we were grateful that the work was done and the right decisions were made. So thank you.
Yeah, in July, we took a bus tour, and, it's often, I think, in reflection on our, work as commissioners, we often kind of focus on the what, but the bus tour kind of amplified the why. And it was an excellent chance to interact with a broad, membership of counselors, the Clean Water Division, other respective public works staff, and we'll kind of get into that in a little bit. And we'll kind of expand that. But, you kind of think sometimes these, tours are a little bit of a boondoggle, and we're just kind of going around and looking at, bus tour here, but it's, there's a lot more behind it. And so we want to kind of expand that. We'll touch on that.
And we continued our tradition, although it's not a long tradition, of holding symposiums, and symposia, perhaps is the right term, each fall, dealing with a different body of water. In 2023, we focused on Lacamas Lake and had a very productive symposium out at the Lacamas Lake Lodge, talking about issues that were then plaguing the Lacamas Lake, Round Lake ecosystem. This past year, we focused on Vancouver Lake, and we'll get into that a little more detail as well. That symposium was well attended. It was very successful. This coming year, we've got another one coming up, and it's a little different focus. It's on non-point source pollution. We're looking at more and less a body of water. We're looking at what causes pollution, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. And then in August of last year, we presented our annual report. It was a little later than normal. Normally, we like to do this in the May-June period of time, but we did report to you last year on our accomplishments, and I think it was well received.
Excellent. Now, one of the things that we really take pride in is, as commissioners, is the fact that we're not only serving in a body that's, this independent view to the Clean Water Division's permitting actions and such, but we're also actively engaged in our communities. There's a list, and that's probably only a partial list of what these commissioners are involved with. And you can see there's such a variety and a diversity of interests, as well as representation as stakeholders themselves. And so they understand what's going on in the watersheds. They're locked into the issues that are surrounding them, and they're engaged in a meaningful way, I think, to start addressing them and be advocates amongst their communities. So that's kind of an interesting wrinkle to us, and what we've really searched for when we start to try and replace commissioners as their chairmen expire. So I think Devin's done a great job in helping us to recruit well. So hats off to her, and we'll kind of expand that as we go too.
I'm just going to give a brief shout out to the Vancouver Lake Technical Advisory Group. You're going to be hearing later this year from Devin about the work that has been done on the Vancouver Lake Management Plan, which is in phase 2 right now, the completion of phase 2 of it. The Technical Advisory Group is a broad number of people from the regulatory community, the environmental community, almost every community you can imagine that has the recreational community has some interest in the lake. And I want to again give a shout out to the county for the good work they did in putting together a management team, consultant team, to get into phase 2 of the lake management plan for Vancouver Lake. It's incredibly important to the long-term health of the lake and the importance of the lake to this community. And there's a lot of great work that's been done, and you'll hear more about that later this year when that work wraps up. Additional accomplishments, we of course continue to hold our normal 8 meetings per year. Those meetings are hybrid, which means that people can participate virtually or they can come in person to our meetings. Due to the good work of our staff, administrative staff, Alice Millward, we're in compliance with our OPMA certification, and we try to make sure we are always following public records laws properly, and Alice keeps us on the straight and narrow in that regard. We made a big effort a couple years ago to recruit more diverse people to serve on the commission, and I think that recruitment was very successful when you look at the range of the diversity of people, the accomplishments they've had, their skill sets. I think we've made great headway in that area, and that is reflected in the current makeup of the commission. We've also pushed for some additional and new language in the code that would reflect what we're doing today versus what we were doing a couple of decades ago. And that first step has been taken with the adoption of the new rates in the code. It will follow with more additional language that will reflect what the Clark County Water Commission is doing these days versus what they did in the past. You expect to see that code changes coming up probably sometime this fall. And of course, building partnerships is something we've really been encouraging our members to do. Get out in the community, talk to people, tell them what you do, tell them how important clean water and clean watersheds are in our community. And just that previous slide showed the outreach that we've had with so many different groups in the community. And then one of our major efforts is to support the Clean Water Division and Public Works when they're out looking for grant monies, which are incredibly important. And we have written multiple letters in the past year in support of a variety of different grants that help support the work of the Clean Water Division of Public Works. And we'll continue to do that, obviously, into the future.
All right. I referred earlier to the idea of the bus tour itself, and it was a roving tour. We got a chance to see a lot around the county. The three main topics that I took away from it were people, process, and technology. And I think Devin really did a nice job, and the planners that were involved in that and the public works staff to really daylight, I think, the strength of what I call, the hub of the bus tour, and that is meeting the people that are actively engaged in the work. Some of these next slides, as we kind of click through, talk really to the idea that the work that they do is pretty complex. We think of it as, it's just a pipe in the ground, but to really cost effectively maintain and understand how those pipes are behaving and what they're doing for us in terms of moving that water. And then on the back end of that transport, how they're cleaning the water before it's left to its receiving bodies. It takes a lot. And so we were really exposed to a lot of the technology and the equipment, a lot of hands-on, not just static displays, but getting a chance to get on the equipment like the street sweeper and, go take a ride and see what this guy's doing when he's operating this thing and how many levers there are and, the complexity of just doing a job of street sweeping, which is becoming increasingly more important. And I think you'll see that reflected in the budgets of, new equipment that's been brought online into the fleet, and then operating that equipment and having enough operators to keep a good pace and comply with the NPDES requirements. Next slide. One of the things that I took away too was just how passionate people are that are, these public servants working in the corners of our watersheds. And this particular group, the monitoring group, really brought that to life for me personally. And I think drew a lot of interaction from a lot of the other people on the tour. They're out long days, hot days, fully garbed up in their, waders, taking a lot of samples to really quantify and qualify how clean our watersheds really are and which areas may be impaired or impacted, and being able to not just collect that data, but to meaningfully integrate it into a plan of action. This is the data that really informs that, and its importance in not only just collecting it, but then integrating it and visualizing it in systems like GIS. It really gives us a much better feel for where we as a commission maybe should look and how much, I think, cumulatively, as you look over trends over years and or adjacent watersheds, cumulatively, the impacts of growth and how they really do touch our streams in terms of quality and quantity. So this group in particular, big salute to them, hats off. Unsung heroes out there doing a lot of field work for us in all kinds of conditions, rain or snow, sunshine. They're out there hammering it. Next slide. This particular part of the tour also brought to light that it's not just about the quantity, but also the quality of the water. And this is where I was referring to earlier at the end of the pipe. before it hits the receiving bodies. This vault inspection and filter replacement, I think, is illustrative of a progression in terms of our ability to kind of address quality a little bit more meaningfully. You know, we size the pipes to address the quantity, but how are we really taking out the sediment loads that are there, as well as now nutrient loads? And so that last picture with the white envelope filter there is a phosphorus filter. We're trying to address those nutrient loads that are coming in and causing us to have, you know, major symposia that Ted was talking about when we're looking at our lakes. It's those cumulative impacts of nutrients that are loading. So being able to not only maintain these, but to be able to retrofit some of these vaults to intercept that nutrient load will help us address more meaningfully, I think, the quality in the watershed as well. And some of the capital improvement projects are focused on just that, those retrofits. So we don't have to totally lose that vault. We could sometimes just replace what's in the vault and attack it a little bit differently that way. Next slide. Finally, you know, the people on the tour, plenty of folks, a lot of smiles, and I think, you know, gratification for especially what these public works folks do for us. All staff, contracts, you know, operations and maintainers, just really brought this thing to life. And again, it was, for me, you know, we had people, process, and technology, but people part was really my great takeaway. So thanks for organizing that. We do leave you with a link here if you want to take a peek. There's a great YouTube video, some personal testimonies there if you're excited to hear more about it. Plenty more to hear. It's, I think, about a 6-minute reel and well put together by other staff too in the county.
Yeah, you know, before we we move to the Vancouver Lake Symposium, I just want to add an emphasis to what Glenn mentioned about the filter cartridges. That's a huge improvement, and the ability to capture phosphorus, which is the kind of common denominator that causes the algae growth, the milfoil growth, the noxious weeds that infect our streams and particularly our lakes. The ability now for the county to purchase those, and they're not cheap, they're expensive. It's an expensive product, but it's an incredibly effective new technology. And now with the increase in the clean water fee, those funds are available to retrofit. I don't know how many hundreds of units, thousands. I mean, literally thousands. This is going to make a significant difference in capturing phosphorus out of our stormwater system. So it's a great plus. Well, moving on to the Vancouver Lake Symposium, as I mentioned, we had a lot of participants in that. It was held at the Water Resources Center overlooking the Columbia River. And in the previous year, the Lacamas Lake Symposium was held at the Lacamas Lake Lodge overlooking Lacamas Lake. So people sort of were able to look at the watersheds that were part of the subject matter. And of course, Vancouver Lake is part of the Columbia River. It used to be a floodplain lake connected to the river. It's not anymore. It's been cut off by diking and dams and a variety of man-made obstacles, which is part of the problem that Vancouver Lake faces. Its natural stream flow has been cut off, and so artificially, many years ago, a channel was cut through from the Columbia River into the lake, the Flushing Channel. It's about 40 years old now, in hopes that it would improve the flow through the lake and keep the lake at a volume that kept the water cleaner, kept the noxious plants down, and that was the goal. Unfortunately, it's not performed as well as it should, and we are where we are. We have a lake that's seriously in decline. And so the symposium was put together. Let's address this. What can we do to make this lake healthier? We had a variety of people that introduced the subject. We had, of course, Mayor Ann McInerney Ogle welcomed us all to her facility, or the city's facility. We had a representative from Senator Cantwell's office. We had Representative Sharon Wiley there. We had your counselors, Councilor Medgavy, Councilor Young, Councilor Belcott in attendance. We had Tanya Engdahl from the Cowlitz tribe, who gave a very moving invocation as we began the proceeding and was there for the entire event. We had city and county staff people. We had representatives from the Department of Ecology, from Department of Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, of course, all the agencies that are involved with the lake in one form or another from the state were in attendance. We had the Columbia Land Trust folks who did an excellent presentation about the conservation lands in the north of the lake. The Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership was there. I mean, just a huge variety of individuals and organizations that were represented, over 100 people. Ports of Vancouver and Ridgefield, shouldn't leave them out because they anchor the ends of our ecosystem. Columbia River on one end, Lake River on the other. And it was really well attended, and it was a variety of great presentations that got people talking. There's a series of photos here that I'll just briefly comment on because there's no reason to really dwell on them other than that's Cowlitz spiritual leader Tanya Engdahl, obviously to the right there, and then a group photo of a number of the people at the end of the symposium. That was only a small number of the attendees, but we tried to gather everyone around for a group photo. We had some breakout sessions and opportunities to meet one another during the different breaks during the event. And all in all, I think we just felt that we came away with a lot of optimism that we can do something to improve the water quality in this great body of water. We can make recreation year round, and we can avoid, if we work hard, the closures due to the algae blooms that seem to periodically come up in the late summer. And I know that Devin's group is working on a beach management plan that we hope will be successful in the coming years so that people can recreate all year long and not have these closures and the danger to toxic blue-green algae to both people and to pets and animals. Our goal is let's get that lake back 24/7, 365 days a year, that we can use it and be proud of it. And I think this symposium went a long way to achieving that. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and move to the next subject. So in the past year, we have had some rather significant turnover on the commission. I've been talking with Alice and with Devin. It's kind of unusual. We've not had that in the past. It's been a pretty stable body for years. And part of it had to do with just people, professional reasons, personal reasons, things just interceded in their lives. And we had a fair amount of turnover. But I will say that the board, the commission is constituted now, has a strong technical aspect to it, a strong diversity in viewpoints and in experience. And I think we'll see an amount of longevity on the board now going forward. It's just one of those sort of blips that happened. But sometimes change is good. Sometimes it's good to have new faces and new voices and new perspectives and points of view. And so going forward, I'm confident we'll benefit from all of that. One of our other challenges was how do we reach some of the more impacted populations in our community in terms of clean water. And so that's a goal that we want to continue to pursue in the coming year or two. We talked about the importance of the rate increases for the Clean Water Division. And now we need to focus on how we're going to implement that. And one of the goals of our commission is to help be the oversight body, the advisory body to you about how we roll out the ability now to enhance clean water work in the Public Works Department. We recognize that this significant increase in rates was a first step because there's going to have to be rate increases in the future. There really are. In a highly urbanized area like Clark County, the rate increase was great, but it's not going to be enough to meet the challenges of the future. So we'll be there advocating when necessary for increases in rates as time goes by.
Yeah, and I'd also amplify a little bit on that part of one of those letters that we wrote to council, wanted to, express, I think, and elevate the idea of, the rate write down through things like grants, through things like the REIT, I believe. Those types of, I think, financial implications induce a little bit of risk in your program. And so independently, we want to be able to take a look at those risks, help Devin and her staff be able to either A, mitigate them, or B, address them head on and say, hey, we need to go back to council and say these three pieces of the CIP, the capital improvement program are at, in jeopardy. Where do we go? Fork in the road. And to look for your insights and guidance to kind of offset those things. We don't know the future, and especially in the climate that we're in federally, about those grant dollars that we've been able to receive. And so what we do need to do is just be smart about looking forward and identifying and help daylighting those risks, not only to Devin's staff, but also to you to be able to address appropriately as they come. It's that adaptive management and it's that risk layer, integrated into it.
I think our next subject is going to be the 2025 Clean Water Commission work plan. And what we did earlier in the year was decided that we were going to create a series of subcommittees that each would concentrate on a particular subject matter area. So the first subcommittee is the Rate Study Implementation Support Group. It's kind of what I talked about just a moment ago. We now have the new funding. There's new staff coming on board. There's new programs to be done. We want to be involved in the oversight and be able to guide and help shape how that all rolls out. So there's a study group in particular, subgroup of the Clean Water Commission that will be working on that exclusively. The second area will be our upcoming third symposium on October 28th. And as I mentioned, this one is about non-point source pollution. We're not talking about a specific body of water now or a lake or stream. We're talking about collectively what happens when stormwater runs off into a Salmon Creek or into the Burnt Bridge Creek watershed. What do we do about it? How do we deal with it? Non-point source pollution is, of course, the most vexatious of all of the problems of pollution because you can't trace it to an individual entity, to a corporation, to a
End of a pipe.
Yeah, it's amorphous, but it's there, and it's a major contributor to the pollution that we face. So this particular symposium is going to focus on that, and we hope it'll be as successful as the ones we've had in the past. The third area of our focus groups with our subcommittee is the Stormwater Management Action Plan that Gren's going to talk about.
Yeah, and the NPDES permit, one of the requirements that Ecology levies on the county is the notion of taking a more focused approach within your boundaries of responsibility and really trying to prioritize where you're going to take limited resources to focus on gaining the biggest ecological lift and impact in mitigating stormwater flows in the county. And so there was a priority system put in place with different criteria to select that very watershed, and it is the Lower Salmon Creek watershed. It's got an incredible amount of growth and urbanization, so those drivers will create, larger scale impacts. And it's also got some unique habitat. One of the few places left in the county that offers still an opportunity to create some additional lift despite the impacts of urbanization. So we really want to look at that integration again of quantity of water and then especially the quality of water to help out Sammy the salmon in his native habitat and truly try to make that habitat restored and is inviting back to a population to help grow that salmon stock in their native spawning grounds. So that's the why behind that. The what is that it's a pretty intensive process, and they've brought on a great consultant to help guide them through the building of that stormwater management action plan. I think in addition to that, there's some above and beyonds that the rate study was able to fund so that we can really do a deep dive there and not only just study it, but create an implementation program that will have some bounds to it and milestones and metrics to start addressing more meaningfully things like illicit discharges. That while the Clean Water Division has done a tremendous job with that, you can imagine the enforcement and the inspection that goes behind that. That often causes a stir, from the various stakeholders who are engaged in businesses across the watershed. So that's a bit of a delicate balancing act, that enforcement aspect, but it's a requirement. And so we want to be able to address that meaningfully too, as a part of that stormwater management action plan amongst, 8 or 9 other key elements that the state requires in building that plan.
Our fourth subgroup is the subgroup that is working with the implementation of climate change element in the comp plan. And I know you all have been briefed, I think, on that particular subject. So we just want to do it from the perspective of the Clean Water Commission as well, and bring that back to you as our advisory group's recommendations as well. And then our last subgroup is community engagement and inclusion. And we talked about the importance of reaching out to various different groups within the community, particularly the disadvantaged groups, the groups that may be most affected by water quality, and engage more frequently and more often with them on these important subjects. And then last is collaboration with other boards and commissions. I know we have an upcoming meeting scheduled with the city's
Urban Community Forest Commission.
Urban Forest.
Or Urban Forest Commission.
Yeah, and that's just one example. We're going to be meeting them and talking about how trees and clean water work together. And we want to reach out and meet with other groups as well that we feel are sympathetic to our needs and our work, and that we can collaborate with effectively.
Yeah, and that would include somebody like Department of Health and the vexing issue of all of our aging infrastructure in terms of wastewater management and the septic systems across the county. That'll be an important part of really trying to address this amorphous non-point source problem and better understanding that. I think, seek first to understand. And so that's a part of our commission's work too, is just to really get our arms around those things and then help to offer some guidance and get that integrated discussion going a little bit better.
And just to amplify that on that a bit, I'm glad Glenn brought up the Department of Health, because that really is a group that you are the Department of Health in terms of the governance structure. But it's really important, we feel, to get into the subject of septic tank regulation much more deeply. We know that malfunctioning and leaking septic systems are a major contributor also to the phosphorus problem and to the pollution problem in our watersheds. And more proactive work in that area, the ability for us to shift from septic to sewer is enormously expensive and is a huge decades-long project, but it's something that has to eventually be done too. But right now, working with the improvement of septic systems, the proper inspection of them, and the ability to aid homeowners with their system upgrades, repairs, is really critical. And that's something we'd like to be more involved with the Department of Health. And clean water recommendations, kind of repeating what we said before, more collaboration across county departments. Here I would shift the focus a little bit to say that we need to integrate stormwater planning more effectively, perhaps, than it's being done today in the development process. So that when new projects come online, whether they're residential, commercial, or whatever, that there's more involvement between the Clean Water Division and community development to understand the cumulative impacts of what happens in a watershed as urbanization continues to happen in this county. And it will. We know it's going to go on. This county is going to grow, projected to grow significantly between now and 2050. We'd like to see more integration between clean water, stormwater issues, and planning and development than perhaps is being done now. I don't know if you had any comments about that or not, Glenn.
Yeah, and I think that ties into some of the code related updates and how to better address that early in the process, especially at the development end and the approval of plans, the types of technologies that we may be able to integrate, the kinds of studies that need to be done before a developer puts a shovel in the dirt. So that we better understand those impacts a little bit below the surface. Things like interaction with groundwater and groundwater mounding, for instance. I mean, these kinds of things are like technically complex, and I won't bore you with details about that, but suffice it to say, if they're not in the code, they're not going to be that driver that creates that incentive for the developer to better work with the land that's available and to reduce the impact of the development as it's put on the land. So, it's this balancing act between GMA and then putting responsible code on the books that's levied in a fair and effective way to gain a, significant achievement in terms of that overall water quality and quantity.
And I think that brings us to the final slide here, which is what are the council's priorities? What would you like us to be doing in 2025 and going forward?
Okay, great. Thank you. I am totally impressed with the work that you're doing. It's really great. I feel like you've checked all of the most important boxes related to the county's role in clean water and lake management. So thank you for that. I served on the Clean Water Commission some years ago, and I must say, you're a much more proactive bunch. So I appreciate that. But let me turn it over to the council members if they have any questions. Oh, I just would like to say that this council itself has less than 3 years experience for each of us. So we're all in the same boat.
All right.
Any questions? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you for this. This is near and dear to my heart. My first job after grad school was the water division at EPA in DC, and I'm the policy director at Ducks Unlimited. And to make space for this job, I gave up executive director role at World Salmon Council, which teaches kids about salmon at local schools here. So I'm really interested in all this stuff. I'd love to be part of that non-point source symposium in October. Put it on my calendar already. I'd love to hear more specifics, really. I'd love to hear what the Vancouver Lake solutions might be that came out of that symposium. I'm not sure if Ducks Unlimited was there, but I saw some big engineering technologies that our engineers forwarded to me in case you want to see some of the more complex, expensive solutions. But I'd love to hear some of those solutions that came out of that symposium. And then the phosphorus filters came up at the Lower Columbia Fish Recovery Board, which I'm on. And I had a question then that wasn't quite answered. It was about how often they have to be replaced, how quickly they get clogged up. And I'm actually curious if they are a source of microplastics themselves. So just curious about a couple of those things. And then, of course, I'm curious about what code things will be coming our way, but it looks like that will be in the fall. So yeah, if you have any questions about answers to any of those, that would be really helpful to me.
Just one quick, and then I'll let Devin, who's much more of a subject matter expert on this, talk to it. But we have phosphorus vault in our stormwater facility in the HOA that I live in. So a small development, 51 homes. That replacement interval really depends on the load of phosphorus going into it. Right now we have very immature trees. And so from the leaves and the degradation of the leaves in the pipes as they move toward the stormwater facility, there is some phosphorus loading there, but we found, luckily, that we haven't had to replace, we've only had to replace them once in a 10-year interval so far. They're coming due for their second round. But we were able to get some extended life beyond what they originally anticipated there. So again, it's going to depend on load, both in the amount of water and then the amount of nutrients in that water and the sources of those nutrients. But that's just one small example. I'll kind of turn it over to Devin.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you do outside of your time as a counselor. Happy to have you at the Non-Point Source Pollution Symposium, and we can follow up about those details and maybe invite you also to give a welcome. Regarding the Vancouver Lake Symposium, that was one event, but we have had an ongoing, what we're calling Phase 2 Vancouver Lake Management Planning effort. That is following the Phase 1 effort that occurred before I came. All of that money has been, or all of that work has been funded through legislative provisos, which Friends of Vancouver Lake has been very instrumental in helping advocate for. The Phase 2 work focused on short-term solutions like treatment of milfoil and algicide treatment to reduce harmful algal blooms, while we've also been focusing on long-term solutions to improve lake flushing. That work is wrapping up now and is expected to conclude and be submitted to Department of Ecology by June 30th. And right now we're having internal discussions as a result of the governor's veto of the third proviso for Vancouver Lake about what our next steps are. We're meeting with Jordan Bogie tomorrow, also having some discussions with ecology, and we'll be talking with Friends of Vancouver Lake about what our strategy is going forward. But I would be happy to come and give a work session or have one-on-ones just to talk about how that work has wrapped up for Vancouver Lake. And go into some of the details. Part of that work was also looking at long-term governance and funding structures to be able to have a sustainable, responsible party for the lake, since there's the county, the city, the ports, Fish and Wildlife. There's a lot of stakeholders, and figuring out who is the responsible body, and is that a separate governance structure, and how do we continue to generate long-term sustainable funding for lake management work, since it has been historically funded just through legislative provisos. Regarding bird stakeholders, I don't believe that Ducks Unlimited was present, but we did have Audubon represented, as well as Columbia Land Trust, who manages the sandhill crane habitat, but would be happy to invite Ducks Unlimited to be at the table as well. Thank you to LCFRB for the funding for the first phase phosphorus cartridge removal. We had funding for, that was a priority for us. We made a commitment that all public filter cartridges will have phosphorus removal. We included that funding need in our rate study assumptions. So we have cost recovery. We also, though, applied for an LCFRB grant. So we're able to save some money and hopefully rededicate that elsewhere. But we do have local funding to continue the replacement of those cartridges in perpetuity. You mentioned code updates right now. We are required by Department of Ecology to update our stormwater code and manual. That is underway, and we'll be coming to both the Planning Commission and the Council in 2026. And a part of that, there's a lot of things that we're proposing, and we've been interfacing with DEEB regularly. We actually have our final meeting with DEEB this Thursday to submit our code changes. We're required to do certain things, and then we have some other non-required things that, working with community development, we've identified that are important. So lots going on, and part of that code and manual is also making phosphorus removal cartridges required for both Lacamas watershed and drainages to Vancouver Lake, not just for public development, but also private development.
Okay, and the only last question was, have you heard anything about the filters themselves being source of microplastic?
I don't, but I can follow up and ask our SME, Jeff Schnabel, to look into that.
Okay, yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
learning a lot about the threats of that we
Okay.
didn't know before.
And I would expect, again, tied to that interval, the shorter they're in the box, the less breakdown of those plastics, but it does represent a threat. So you've piqued my interest too. So I'll converse with Jeff too.
Thank you.
I would add, Councillor Little, with regard to the Vancouver Lake Symposium, there is an online resource where each presentation was recorded, and you can find that on the Public Works Clean Water Division website. It'll have each presentation broken down. You could select whatever ones you're interested in looking at, and they're right there. So.
Okay, I'm not sure the counselors that are online, I can't see you, but
Chair,
oh,
it's
please go ahead.
Councillor Belcott. Good morning, everybody. Hey, Devin, I was just about to ask you, how legislatively, without the funding now for Vancouver Lake, how that was going to impact the Vancouver Lake management or the lake plan? How is that? Are you going to still be able to do that work or no?
Great question. It's it's a two-part question. In our rate study, we did include funding to hire a lakes and watershed coordinator to be focused and dedicated to lake and watershed non-point source pollution reduction work that was requested in the 2025 budget and has been approved. We were anticipating hiring that position in Q3. We're still talking about, without the legislative proviso money, the value of that position. It could be more valuable because we need to be doing more work internally. However, there won't be that proviso money with a dedicated project to do additional analysis and have a consultant that we were expecting from the proviso. But we did in our rate study include $100,000 a year for lake management work, and that can be used broadly, whether or not that's for additional analysis or implementation work. That was not in the 2025 budget. We're working on a change request for the 2026 budget to request authorization to spend that money as an ongoing $100,000 per year for lake work.
Okay. And I
isn't
can't
a lot.
remember. I can't remember when we took our tour, because I know the Army Corps of Engineers was mentioned, but has any recent conversations been had with them for potential future dredging projects of any sort for the lake? Can't remember.
Great question. We have not been talking about actual dredging of the lake. One of the early alternatives was looking at bathymetric modifications, which is more of that dredging, creating deeper areas of the lake, shallower areas of the lake. However, the focus has been mainly on the Flushing Channel, which is operated by the Port of Vancouver. We are looking at a potential bridge project or culvert projects, or there are other alternatives being explored. We are only at the conceptual design phase. So the intent of the proviso money was actually to continue that design process to move towards a final alternative for the Flushing Channel. The only dredging that I'm aware of is required maintenance that the port does at the mouth of the Flushing Channel, where it meets the Columbia River to help reduce sediment accumulation so that they can ensure water is flowing through the Flushing Channel into the lake. So the Army Corps has not been involved, and although they would be a key permitting partner, haven't been a strong implementing partner at the table.
Okay.
I would
thanks,
add
Devin.
that while dredging certainly improved the depth and the water quality 40 years ago, it proved to be the most expensive of the work that was done on the lake, and it's considerably more expensive today. And the issue of what you do with the dredge spoils is a very perplexing one. So dredging really kind of came off the table initially because of cost and difficulty of dealing with the subject. So
Yeah, the bathymetric or the dredging work was, I think, initial estimates at like $50 million versus like a bridge or culvert, which was more in the $20 million range. So it was deemed less economically feasible.
Yeah, understood. Okay. And I just wanted to thank you all for educating us last year. I felt like we were on a symposium, field trip, or some type of workshop with you all on a very frequent basis last year, which was it was great. It was educational. Some of my favorite parts were Vancouver Lake, because I grew up swimming in that lake. And then also when we were looking at the streams and how those in the field measured water and clean water. It was very, very interesting. So thank you all for your hard work and that and educating us. It's one thing seeing things on paper, but absolutely another being in person and seeing how things are working. So thank you for all your hard work. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for participating. And we were with you a lot last year, and we appreciated learning together as we requested the rate increase. And you probably haven't heard as much from us this year because We've been trying to stay out of your hair. We appreciate all of the time you spent with us last year, and glad to hear your positive feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. And I think Councilor Belcott summed up, what I wanted to say. Great job. You're doing amazing work. And I had a couple of questions. When's the next bus tour?
We've actually talked a little bit about that in committee, I think, just to say, hey, we've got some new faces, as counselors that may be able to benefit from this interaction. Because like Councilor Belcott said, I started to gain some insights from the counselor perspective, sitting in the seat next to him, and having a lunch discussion over different topics. So I do think there's value there.
We don't have a bus tour scheduled right now. However, we do have a tour of Heritage Farm Wetland Restoration Project happening tonight for the Clean Water Commission. You're welcome to stop out if you'd like to. You're always welcome also to request a one-on-one tour, and we'll take that, thought back about a bus tour and talk about whether or not that's something we can do this year, or it'd probably be a bit more feasible to look to next year, but always happy to take you out and talk about projects as you're interested.
Thank you. I'm also looking forward to October Symposium. I got a chance to attend the Vancouver Lake Symposium last year in October for a couple of hours, had other commitments, but I learned a heck of a lot in the first 2 hours that I was there. And it was incredibly organized, and it seemed to be very well attended by people that are passionate and really care. So thank you for doing that. I have a couple of other questions because I was looking at your SWOT analysis. And one of the things that concerns me as someone who works in the nonprofit sector, as Councilor Little does as well, is sometimes the lack of awareness or the lack of participation. And I see that a lot in your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, that there's an overall lack of public interest in the work that you do. And the opportunities of raising public awareness and creating those partnerships. I'm kind of curious, and I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to fully look at the report, but if you can possibly summarize, what can be done to increase awareness, to activate public participation and get more people involved in an issue that's incredibly important, because I personally like water. I don't have the level of subject matter expertise that my peers do, but clean water is important. So how do you get people engaged?
Yeah,
What's
that's a great question, and you hit the nail on the head. I don't know what it is, but stormwater some people get really excited, and some people are like, what the heck is that? So we did make an effort last year to have more open houses. We did a public survey, which was responded to well, but when it got to our rate study open houses and our stormwater capital plan, we just didn't have the turnout we expected. So one of the things that we're working on now is exploring what incentives we can potentially, public health does a great job and has incentive policies and programs in place. We just don't have those, but we are working on exploring what can we do to encourage people to attend, but also where can we meet people where they're at. Are we just, should we be going to others' meetings? Should we be partnering more with community-based organizations that are reaching the people that we need to reach? And what I will say is that a part of our municipal stormwater permit requirements is that we do have to do education and outreach and public involvement. So we have 2 dedicated staff right now, and we're anticipating hiring a 3rd this year. They're focused on general awareness, stewardship, and behavior change. And one of the things that they have to also do in this permit cycle in partnership with our neighboring jurisdictions is identify those overburdened communities that are representative of disadvantaged socioeconomic, and document how we identified them and how we're reaching them. And so that work is underway, and always looking for partnerships with organizations, and just making sure that we're using the right language. And when we're talking about stormwater, which is very technical, connecting the value and importance of the work to things that the population cares about, which we're hearing is like swimming and recreation more than pipes and filter cartridges, perhaps.
In the thank you for that. In the annual report under the 2025 Clean Water Commission Action Plan and Recommendations, you mentioned item number 5, collaborating with a number of organizations, but most of the ones that were mentioned are governmental organizations and commissions like City of Vancouver's Urban Forestry, Clark County Public Health, etc. I don't see any of the local nonprofits named. I mean, Watershed Alliance is the one that comes to mind, for example. Is there any work being done or collaboration being done with Fourth Playing Forward, another organization that is also incredibly involved in this type of work? So I'm kind of curious to learn what that partnership looks like.
Right now, I would say the partnership we've worked with them to help recruit new commissioners and also to encourage them to attend our events. However, with the new permit requirement to work more directly with vulnerable populations, we're in the, I would say, early days of formally establishing those partnerships. And with those partnerships, there needs to be incentives and funding to not only for us to do the work, but for organizations like Fourth Playing Forward or LULAC to also participate. So I mentioned incentives and contracts for community-based organizations to assist us with that work. That work is currently in development and is a priority for the next 5 years.
I would add that Watershed Alliance is near and dear to my heart. I served 8 years on the board, and we've collaborated with them in a number of areas. They are very involved in the technical advisory group for Vancouver Lake. They've been involved with the county on a number of different projects. We know Watershed Alliance is an important player in this community in a number of different levels, and they've been very involved with the county, with the city, with other agencies. So we reach out to them, but they're just one. There are others that we want to have more established relationships with too, like Columbia Lower Estuary Group to the Columbia River. But we're reaching out. We're trying to do that. We're going to do more of it in the future. So
Thank you, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Okay, is Councillor Young not here? Okay. Okay, then it comes to me to make my comments. Well, first, I want to really recognize all the hard work you did related to the rate study. It was overdue, and it was significant amount of work, and multiple times you had to come before the council and answer a lot of questions. So really appreciate that. And I think that you managed to, as we compared ourselves with other local jurisdictions, still come in with the lowest rate. I was not sure that was the best. And so I am just totally open to keeping an eye on the rates and whether or not it's enough to really accomplish what needs to be accomplished related to clean water. I know from the Clean Water Act, you know, there's a couple of phrases that I always look to, and one is the directive to treat to the maximum extent practicable and to provide reasonable assurance. And I think whether or not there's enough funding, you know, and the enforcement and everything that goes with that, that is that reasonable assurance. I'm happy that you're looking at the comp plan. And I think it would be also important to look at permitting and that development code. What I see, I'm more in the rural area and on the edge where a lot of the new development is occurring, and I often see inadequate stormwater measures in place. And I know I visited the confluence of G Creek and the Lewis and Columbia rivers, and they've observed over time, those property owners, that the sediment, it's a couple feet deeper now than it used to be. So that leads me to wonder how we coordinate with the cities, because the cities have their stormwater permits as well. And the streams, you know, they run through the cities and the county. So that would be really important. I think the enforcement as monitoring and enforcement is really very important. And you can't enforce everywhere, but I think strategic enforcement so that people know we got to follow these rules in order to, or there's a consequence. And I've seen also, well, people contact me when they have problems. So that's, I'll just share them with you. That as we're developing in maybe more difficult sites, some of the standards for the stormwater facilities themselves. And also I'm thinking the rain events that we're having, so significant that they're not performing as they should, because I think there's just more water coming through them, or they're on a hillside, or they're just there's just some challenging examples out there. So I just want to reinforce that and just know that I would be supportive of being stronger in those realms. Let's see, I had several. So the codes, yeah, I think we'll probably have a work session at some point as those get developed and come before us in the fall. So that would be great. And I did miss the opportunity to drive a street sweeper. So I would also be supportive of potentially another tour opportunity. Let's see. Oh, and in terms of risk, I know that I think we are still not in compliance with the GMA, but I expect that pretty soon we will be. But then, depending on what happens with the comp plan, we may be out of compliance again. And that poses a risk related to grants. So if you weren't aware of that, I just want to make you aware of that. Is there something you'd like to share? Let's see. Oh, and if you have, I would encourage you, I'm glad you're working with Jordan. I'd encourage you to if there's a legislative package that you want us to support, please bring that forward. I know there was legislation, and I think it was Representative Wiley that brought that forward related to septic systems and helping and providing some resources to convert. And I think the estimates now, and this is just in the urban area where people have the ability to hook up to the sewer system, it's looking like 80 years at the rate we're going before they all get hooked up. So thanks for calling attention to that. So, but whatever we can do, however you want to advise us or recommendations, please, I encourage you to bring that forward. And public health, we had a presentation recently from public health on blue-green algae and algae mats that are on the bottom of the Columbia River that then break loose and float up, and a dog that ended up dying. And I think there was some impacts to the pet owner related to that. So I don't know if we're seeing it in the Columbia River. I'm feeling like it's probably out there. So another thing to take a look at. But I just commend you all for the work that you're doing. It's really important. I think fundamentally people might be hard to wrap their head around stormwater, but water quality is, I think, one of the highest priorities for the community. So thanks for your work.
Thank you, Chair Marshall. And I think one of the things that I feel very proud to be able to say is we're working on all the things that you mentioned, and specifically around the code and sediment and climate change and enforcement. One of the things that we just did as a part of our permit requirements is we had to renew all of our interdepartmental agreements for the next 5 years with everyone that does clean water work. So we renewed our interdepartmental agreements with public health, community development, internal services, reestablishing what is everyone's shared responsibility in stormwater permit compliance. And as a part of that, we identified a lot of opportunities for training and building resources and capacity for sediment and erosion control. And we have funding to do that. And a lot of the work on our stormwater code and manual update is helping reiterate everyone's different roles and responsibilities and how we work together. So I'm very excited and optimistic. These changes don't happen overnight, but they are underway, and everyone's on board and working towards the same goal and seeing opportunities for improvement.
Great. I'm heartened to hear that. And Devin, I know you've been doing a great job, and I appreciate your leadership. So go ahead,
Oh, yeah,
Counselor.
those are great points, Chair. I had more question about enforcement and what our authority is and what purview the council has over that or any fees associated with that. Just wonder if you could let me know a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So our stormwater permit, which is passed through from EPA to Department of Ecology to us, does explicitly state that the Clean Water Division in the county has the regulatory backstop for all Clean Water Act permit related code requirements. And we not only have our stormwater code and manual, but we also have a whole chapter of our county code 1326 that is focused on all of our water quality requirements. Code enforcement is in community development. And so we actually pay for a staff person and work with them on any code violations or anything that needs to be elevated to code enforcement. A lot of what our team does is really focus on responding to complaints and providing that technical assistance. And technical assistance and voluntary compliance is always the goal. But when we have situations where we're not seeing compliance as a result of technical assistance, that's when we refer cases to community development, their code enforcement arm, to proceed with code enforcement. So we do have the requirement. If we're not doing it, we can be in non-compliance with our stormwater permit, but we do rely and work very closely with community development when we get to the point that enforcement is needed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, I just have one, I think, last question. And what time is that tour of the Heritage Farm wetland restoration?
We'll be starting at 6 tonight. It'll be from 6 to 7. And that's a pre-construction tour. We're planning to finally break ground this month after many years, as you've probably been tracking.
I know we
We're
first
very
started
excited.
talking about this when I was on the commission so long ago.
I don't know about that. Cultural resources.
Maybe just bring your
You're
rubber
really
boots.
nervous.
Okay, I guess that's it. Very supportive of the work that you're doing and appreciate it. So thanks very much.
And thank you to Ted and Glenn. That was such
Ted
an
and
excellent
Glenn,
presentation. I really appreciate it. And the rest of the commission who's
And the rest of the commission. Okay, thank you. And we just have this one work session. And with that, no objection, this is adjourned.
Great, thank you.